give travel tips for if you want to plan your own trip to England or Scotland or even anywhere in Europe. That's what I have here. So there might be some things you may find, oh, it's really boring, but we have travel tips and how we planned this trip and how we did the trip. And when we presented this before, my husband, these are almost all my husband's photographs. He does landscape photography as a hobby. So, there was a moment where he talked about taking these pictures, and I'll see what I can do about that, to do that.
You go as a group, get a group?
No, we don't. We've always traveled just the two of us. So I'll take you through the 3 weeks and where we actually went to, and then we'll go through and look at the slides individually. So we arrived in London. We went to Selfridges, the Wallace Collection, Portnell Gallery, St. Paul's, not the cathedral. This is St. Paul's Church, Punch and Judy show we saw. Went to Newcastle, we saw the library, of course. So we're both librarians, so it's natural for us to find the local library and visit. This is downtown Newcastle. Art gallery. Alnwick Castle, which if any of you have seen any of the Harry Potter movies, a few scenes from Harry Potter were filmed here. Hadrian's Wall. St. Mary's Lighthouse, this is in Newcastle. Tiny Hall Priory. Newcastle is known for its bridges. There are a lot. And then we went up to the Isle of Skye. It's the main town in Skye, Portree. The Vegan Castle, home of the MacLeod clan. Old Man of Stores. I have many more pictures of this guy. Old Man of Stores is the rock on the left-hand side. Island Donan Castle. We went to London, spent a day at the Royal Chelsea Flower Show. The theme this year was World War I, the 100th anniversary.
You get rid of the other tourists? Look at that, I don't see any other.
A fancy clipping. Then we spent a week in the city of Wells, which is the largest cathedral, the smallest cathedral town in England. Wells Cathedral. Spent a day in Bristol. To see Salisbury Cathedral. The town of Bath. And Glastonbury. That's called the Glastonbury Tour. So how did we do it? 3 weeks, we went to all those places. The first thing you decide where you want to go. We decided we wanted to go to Northumberland. We had friends recommend places. We had been to the Lake District a couple years earlier and really liked the area, so we wanted to explore it further. We've always wanted to see Hadrian's Wall. Scotland, of course, how can you say no to the Isle of Skye, which we had never been to. We've been in lots of other places in Scotland, but we've never been to Skye. I had the Chelsea Flower Show on my list of places to visit for years and years and years, and when I discovered that our travel time was going to coincide exactly with the flower show, I bought tickets probably 5 months in advance because it sells out really, really fast. And we actually attended the flower show on the very last day of the show. And Wells and Salisbury Cathedral, and those were Daryl's choices. He had read about, well, we had been to Salisbury before, but he had read about the architecture and stuff of Wells Cathedral. So we had made our decision then based on a variety of things. We choose anchor locations. We stay 1 week at a time in 3 different locations or in 2 different locations if it's 2 weeks. We sometimes buy a Brit Rail pass, not always. We rely on public transportation 100%. We have never rented a car in England because their bus and train service is so good. There really isn't a need for that. Having said that, the next time we go back to Isle of Skye, we will rent a car just because the bus service isn't as frequent and to the places that we would really like to get to. So we will go back to Skye and rent a car. That'll be our first time. Learn to love schedules. Being a librarian, I organize things. I love schedules. I think they're wonderful. You can find them all online. We actually purchased 2 smartphones to take with us, and we purchased a 1-month data plan when we got there. It was really easy money, short, and then we were able to actually, Daryl could go on a walk by himself. I could stay home. I could go do something else, and we still had a connection. Plan at least 6 months ahead in order to find low fares. We tend to travel in the early spring. That's the cheapest time to go. You can use aggregate fare sites such as Expedia. Find the tail end of the cheap flights, and that's usually why we travel. Normally we travel early spring because the fare changes around April 1st. You can travel before March 3rd, the end of March 30th. The fares are a little bit cheaper. And we use what they call self-catering apartment, which is a fully furnished apartment. So you can actually feel like you're living in the community that you're visiting. You have your own apartment, you've got your own dishes, you've got your own bedding. It's a fully furnished apartment. So that, because hotels in London, you can't get a hotel less than $100 a night. Outside of the city, you can find a little bit cheaper, but it just made sense to stay in one place for a week. We could buy meals when we wanted to, we could fix meals when we wanted to, we could go out when we wanted to, but we didn't have to. If you're in a hotel, you have to go out to eat, unless you're lucky enough to have a B&B, but then you get breakfast. Then what about lunch and dinner? So
When is the off season?
off season is anytime after October 30th and before April 1st,
Yeah.
except the holiday times. So self-catering apartment, they're fully furnished. That's my husband Daryl in the center. These are a couple of the living rooms, 2 of the places we stayed. Little kitchen. We wanted to how we chose our self-catering apartments. We wanted to stay in Northumberland. Daryl knew about St. Mary's Lighthouse. It's near Hadrian's Wall. So we started searching on self-catering apartments, and we found this place online. And I have just to let you know, I have done all of my arrangements I've done online. These apartments show up all over when you're searching in the UK. It's self-catering is the term. So you can find them all online. You can check their schedules. They give you all kinds of things, how to get here, where we are located, and I look at all of this stuff. Because we're using public transportation, we want to be near the buses. I don't want to have to walk 40 minutes to get a bus when I know I want to use that bus every day. I'm lazy that way. So this is their schedule, when it's available, what kind of pricing. And again, we were doing this arrangements in October for a May travel. So a good 6 months, 7, 8 months in advance.
And they rent them for a week at a time?
We rent them for a week at a time. They're usually a Saturday to Saturday rental. So this is a little map we found online from the color codes. That little red circle was the metro stop, and then that's the walking directions to get to where our apartment was. So that showed it's pretty nice little walk. There was actually a little walk that went straight across between parking lots, and that's showing walking along the sidewalks. As soon as we arrived in town, the gentleman said, "Well, where are you going?" I said, "How did you know we were tourists?" So we told him where we wanted to go, and he said, "You don't have to go all the way around that way." He said, "You just cut right through there. There's a parking lot there." So we did. So we bought a little smartphone. Public transportation in the UK is relatively inexpensive. You can actually buy train tickets for your long trips before you even leave the US. Of course, you do get phone calls from your credit card company saying, "We just noticed there was a purchase made for a train trip in London," because I had just ordered our tickets from London to Newcastle. And he said, "Did you make this purchase?" I said, "Yes, and you're going to see a few more too." But I order them online and say I want to pick them up in London at Paddington Station or at King's Cross Station. When you get to the train station, you put your credit card in the machine and it spits out all your tickets. It's really wonderful. But my husband felt we really had to have this picture. This was actually a trip we took 2 years ago. We took this picture of the food we got: salted beef, mustard and spinach on granary bread, elderflower soda, and curried lime pickled chips. Or crisps, as they're called in the UK. But he really liked those curry lime pickle.
What is
I didn't.
elderflower soda?
Elderflower is a very light flower flavor. It's almost like a grape, a really light grape.
Yeah.
You can get it all over the UK, and we love it, which is why they mix it with grape and elderflower. So we did purchase a Brit Rail pass on this trip. We don't usually buy Brit Rails. Rick Steves has wonderful information on his website as to when the Brit Rail pass is a good idea, when it's not. If you're doing long trips, especially if you're going from London to Scotland, it will always make sense to buy a Brit Rail because that's your most expensive trip. If you're not making the long trips up and back to Scotland, it's probably not worth buying the pass. And because you can buy tickets online before you go. So this is, like I said, learn to embrace schedules, all kinds of travel tips. We want to go from this point to this point. How do we get there and what kind of options? There was 2 changes, 2 trains and walking, or walking and a coach. This is another bus schedule. A map. We were in Newcastle. We want to get to Vindolanda, which is on Hadrian's Wall. What are your options? There's a train that takes an hour and 30 minutes, costs about $20. You can do a train and a walk. You can do a bus, you can do a taxi. This is an interesting website that I stumbled across. Food and drink. What kind of things can you get? We really like this little restaurant because for £7.99, you could get this whole roast dinner. It's $8, which is really about $10 US. Yeah, but if you want to stay in and eat, we had a couple of meals here. And actually, this meal down here I think was £10 at the grocery store. We came home and heated it up, made the salad. So that's $15 for 2 people as opposed to $10 per plate. So you have a lot of options. Really like these little crisps. You can get Worcestershire flavored crisps, or steak and onion, or smoky bacon, or roast chicken crisps. English love their potatoes. Anything you would put on a regular potato, they make into a crisp. At Thanksgiving time, you can buy turkey and stuffing flavored crisps.
Oh my goodness.
So there we went, Boston to London. So our first day in London, we actually did an overnight flight from Saturday to Sunday morning. So it's early Sunday morning. We got in from the train, we went and had breakfast, and decided we're going to go to the Wallace Collection. We walked over there from Euston Station, and they were not yet open. And it was a normal day in England, very hazy, cloudy, rainy, drizzly day. So we kept walking around with the Wallace, and we stumbled across Selfridges. Any of you have been watching the Selfridges on PBS? That's the store, and they were having a special, Hello Beautiful. But what you can't see behind there, well, there's an angel up there. That is the Selfridges store, and that's my selfie from Selfridges. That is the window display at Selfridges. You see what it's made out of? So, pot lids.
Pot lids.
Pot lids. It's all,
Oh yeah, and the pots.
all the handles are there. I thought that was just fantastic. That was the window display at Selfridges. So we got to the Wallace Collection. Gorgeous old house. And what was really nice is that almost all the museums, they're either free or a very small charge for almost all the museums. This family collected armor of all kinds, but they allow you to take pictures. Very, very rarely that we weren't allowed to take pictures. Took a little walk to go to the Courtnall Gallery. We had heard about an international black and white photography show that was being held at the Courtnall. So we said, oh, what else is there? And they have a museum there. Who knew? That's the inner courtyard. Dogs were having a great time in the fountain. Was that a run walk?
A dig off.
Somebody dig off. Down in the lower left corner.
Looks like an R and a.
Could be right. I
It was just these unexpected things.
can go up and look.
That's you should know. Isn't it Monet?
Monet.
Yes. I couldn't find a signature on it, but
Yeah.
the pictures that we had seen, we've seen at the Boston MFA, it was like, oh, it lives here.
Yeah.
That's their stairway.
Isn't that amazing?
That's pretty incredible. Yeah. This is Covent Garden. Wandering around from the Courtauld, working our way through the center of London, working our way to the train station. We had the day to spend. Our train to Newcastle wasn't until 4 o'clock. So we're just wandering around Covent Garden. And we found this St. Paul's Church. And it's not St. Paul's Cathedral, it's the church. And outside was this little sign that says, "Your Punch and Judy need you." And it says it's a Mayfair, Sunday, May 11th. It's like, hey, that's today. Not to mention all the parents with kids in strollers that were all heading down this little corridor. It's like, let's follow these people. And so this was one of those things we found by accident. We weren't expecting this. And they were having a Punch and Judy fair. If you know Punch and Judy, they've been around for probably hundreds of years in England. And everyone knows the stories of Punch and Judy. But in this little courtyard, they had probably 15 different booths that were all Punch and Judy booths. And every 10 minutes, they were moving the plays from one booth to another. So there were 3 plays going on at any given time with groups of children just, they knew the stories, they were laughing. It was just fantastic. We just never expected to see that. And who knew Agatha Christie lived and wrote in and around the Covent Garden area, and this was another one of those serendipitous walking along saying, hey, look, Agatha Christie. So the applicable picture of the spouse in
Yes.
front of the Agatha Christie
I was just
sign.
thinking,
You'll see obligatory pictures of spouses. So then we took the train from London to Newcastle on our first day.
Did you carry coals?
What's that?
Coals to Newcastle. Did you carry coals?
Carry coal to Newcastle. No, and the coal industry has really devastated Newcastle. This is a train. A week in Newcastle.
How long did it take to get you from one point to the other?
From London to Newcastle is about 3.5 hours on the train, which is nice. High-speed train. You could take slower trains. So the things we had to learn about riding on the metros and the trains is that you usually have to open your own doors. And it's not always apparent where that button is, but on this one, on those yellow doors, there's a little green button that looks like a doorknob. This is our little station, color codes. The stations don't always have people there, so you might have to buy a ticket to use the train before you get on the train. So we're walking through Newcastle, we found the library, of course. In the library, they had a special display of some of the rare books from their rare book collection. And this is a map from inside a book, and it's a map of Barbados and the early plantations. And I was really intrigued because I do my genealogy, and my husband's family is from Barbados. His grandmother was born in Barbados. And I was just looking, her great-grandmother's, his grandmother's great-grandfather lived near the hole, and if the word "the rock" on the bottom, there, right next to it says the hole. And there are actually family names that I recognize on that map. So I'm trying to take a picture. Being librarians, we went and found the library, the reference librarian, and said, is it possible we could see this book? And he said, oh, well, try to find it. And so he got on the phone and he was calling all around. But we ended up finding an actual copy of this book on Google Books online. So that was really kind of cool. But we picked up a flyer at the library. So look, great inspiration. You can get inspiration from other libraries. And we found out that there was this talk show going on. Jimmy Forsyth, photographer, down in the 3rd column on the bottom, it says he's going to be talking about the Newcastle Picture History Collection at the West End Library on Monday. And there it is. It's Monday. We're there. It's like, oh boy, we got to go to this talk. So we grabbed the librarian and said, we want to go to this talk. How do we get there? And he said, we have a bus pass. So as you grabbed another librarian, they told us exactly what bus to get on.
Nice. And
where we wanted to go to. And we had about 45 minutes to do it. So we hopped on the bus. We went out to the suburbs of Newcastle, never expecting we would see that. Told the driver we want to go to the West End Library, drop us off somewhere near there because we don't know when we're going to get there. Okay. They dropped us off, and he didn't tell us. He said, oh, the library's just back there a ways. He didn't say exactly, he just pointed. So we took off and looked for a building that looks like a library. was actually a little storefront, but we found the library.
Cell phone.
Singing to us.
You have music.
Yeah, there you go. So we went to this little branch library and we said we were here for the talk, for the photographer's talk. She said, oh, they're probably in the meeting room. Nope, they weren't in the meeting room. Said, oh, well, I wonder where they are. And then we realized at the same moment it was the wrong Monday.
Oh.
It wasn't happening until the next Monday, and by that time we knew we were going to be in Sky. But she said, but don't worry. She said, the gentleman that does the talk is here today volunteering. So she took us over, and there he was, and so he gave us this. And they were doing this fantastic collecting of old photographs because coal to Newcastle, bringing the coal to Newcastle just isn't happening anymore. The industry is really gone. So they're trying to preserve their history and the families and businesses and people that lived there. And so they had been inviting people for the last several years to come to the library, bring your old pictures, bring your family stories. They were scanning all these pictures, putting them in notebooks, and then they were going to computerize the whole list. So it was a fun time. We got to chat for quite a while about their project. This is just walking through the streets of Newcastle. A German bratwurst seller. They were having a food festival. And you know you're near Scotland when they have iron brew flavored fudge. See that orange fudge there?
Yeah.
Iron brew is a particular soda made in Scotland. It's kind of a cherry soda flavor, but it's very, very, very popular in Scotland. So Newcastle is just near the border, so here they were advertising iron brew flavored and coconut and Snickers and cookie dough and
Do you
salted
bring stuff
caramel.
home or do you have it sent home?
We sometimes bring stuff home. We don't usually send it, it won't last long enough. We eat it on the way. But we did buy coconut ice, salted caramel, and something that was chocolate. I don't see it in the picture, but we skipped the iron brew flavored biscuits, also known as cookies, if you're American. And that is a real butcher shop. That is typical of butcher shops, especially in the cities. And fortune tellers. Gypsies, yes. So there's a picture of some of the bridges in Newcastle. Lots of different bridges in Newcastle. But their most recent one is this one called the Millennium Bridge. And that is on a great big gimbal. The two ends are on a gimbal and the whole thing tilts up and become like angel wings, sort of. And then the ships can go underneath it.
Wow.
It's their Millennium Bridge. So there's,
Looks like the arch in St. Louis.
yeah, it does. It really does.
Definitely.
It was really cool to see the great big gears right in the center. Newcastle has St. Nicholas Cathedral. We kept seeing the spires. We said, let's find where those spires are. Got to Cathedral Square. My husband likes to take cathedral pictures. Just something really glorious about them. Even on a gray day. So we ride the buses. This is the little bus. This hopefully tells you buses to Alnwick, Bamberg, Sea Houses, and Berwick via the coast. And the reason we carry our cell phones with us is because you can take pictures of the bus schedule. And you've always got it with you.
Oh, very good point. Right. Very good
And you
point.
just whip out your phone. When was that bus again? Pull up the picture and blow it up. That was really helpful, especially in this area where the buses were seasonal. So the Alnwick Arms, lots of pubs, local pubs, says Husband Daycare Center. And it says, need time to relax? Need time to yourself? Want to go shopping? Leave your husband with us. We will look after him for you. You just pay for his drinks. I thought that was just really, really wonderful. Especially since Alnwick has a lot of little antique shops and things. So this is the Alnwick Castle. Be sure to pick up the brochures. This was very helpful, even in the cartoon version. See where we are. They have extensive gardens now. Watch that little squiggle. See that little squiggle right in the center? That's a fountain. Remember that fountain. There's Alnwick. Daryl took off on a walk, someone told him how to get to the spot where he could take his picture. So I said, I'm going to the gardens, you go, find your picture spot. So he did. This is where the Duke of Northumberland lives. One of his famous ancestors is Mr. Smithson, who set up the Smithsonian Institute, which we didn't know. He was actually a bastard son of the Duke of Northumberland and never wanted to embrace the name even though he was allowed to. He kept his Smithson name and gave all of his wealth to the U.S. for the Smithsonian Institute. I didn't know that till we came on that tour. But this is where they filmed parts of Harry Potter, specifically the how to fly with your broomstick lessons. So they were giving broomstick lessons on the lawn. And they had this thing for children, and they had already closed for the children, so they let us just come in. There's a big dragon. The kids got to play with their swords and wands or something and slay the dragon. They would wheel that card out. Get to know the locals. Always a good idea. And we left our kitty at home with a cat parent, so. Remember the fountain? There it is. Very pretty.
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
on these castles and very elaborate gardens that you see? Is this supported by the museum itself, or do you
Some
get
of-
government funds?
Some of
or-
them are supported by the National Trust.
Yeah.
Some of them have stayed in the family. They're still part of the family, so the family runs a trust.
Well, wealthy folks that
Well,
don't under.
I'm not sure they would really be considered wealthy. They own the castle. It's kind of something they can't get rid of. It's the white elephant anymore. Some of them still have some wealth attached, but it's expensive to keep castles up.
Yeah, but just to maintain the
So,
place.
and to maintain them. So most of the castles you have to pay for, even if they're sponsored by the National Trust. So,
You pay a fee to get in? those?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. They have a poison garden here. See the little skull and crossbones?
Yeah.
It's under lock and key at all times. You must go in with a guide. You are not allowed to touch or sniff or taste anything. And they take you on a tour and show you each of the poisonous plants and tell you why they're poisonous and what they do if ingested, and then some interesting stories of how people have used these plants over the years. It was very
What were some of the
entertaining.
plants, Ruth? What were?
I'm not a plant
Oh, okay.
person, so I don't remember. I just, some of them were just so pretty. They said, oh yeah, these are just such lovely weeds, and what they look like, where you can understand how people could get confused and pick the wrong thing, throw it in the soup pot, next thing you know, Aunt Mary's gone. But yeah, jealous girlfriends that invited the boyfriend and his new girlfriend over for dinner, put that special little herb that looks like oregano, and how they got caught. Marijuana is still highly illegal to own, so they did actually have some marijuana plants in here, and she told us they have a license from the Parliament to not be allowed to actually have the plant in the garden, and it's under lock and key. It's in a special cage of itself in there because it's illegal. There's the top of the. See the storm over the trees?
Oh, yeah.
I took this picture and I walked as fast as my legs would take me to get down to the pavilion. I just made it before the big storm hit. It was a huge, heavy thunderstorm. But luckily there's a little cafe tea shop in there, so Daryl wasn't quite so lucky. He got caught coming across the way from that picture he took. So he got a little damp. Lovely countryside, lots and lots of open places that you are allowed by law to walk, public walkways, and owners must allow people to walk on their property. Yeah, there's thousands of miles of public walkways. So, using the bus, hopping on the bus, waiting for the bus. This is a good sign to find. Bus meets train. That means if the bus comes here, you will be guaranteed a train connection. So the bus always the trains don't run to the bus's schedule, the buses run to the train schedule. But only when they offer this service. So this is a good sign to get to know. Hadrian's Wall adventure. This is not Hadrian's Wall. This is us walking to Hadrian's Wall. So we decided we wanted to go to Hadrian's Wall. We were told it was a nice walk, and we took the train from Newcastle to Barden's Mill because that's what looked like a good place. And we got to Barden's Mill, and it was a little tiny one shop town, little tiny village. We walked into the center of the village. There were 2 cars in the area we thought was the car park for the train station. Nobody's around. There's no signs. It's supposed to be really easy access to Vindolanda, to Hadrian's Wall. So we saw a little shop. There were some people sitting outside having tea because it was a nice day. So we went to the shop and we asked some of the people at the shop, how do we get to Hadrian's Wall? They said, oh, well, we're not from around here. Talk to the shop owner. So we talked to him. He came around the counter, went over to the windowsill. He picked up a piece of paper. He said, here's the map. And he gave us this. And there's a little caveat that says, definitely not to scale. But the ladies at the shop said, oh yeah, it's only about 20 minutes walk, but you want to go to Vindolanda first. Like, okay, I had read about Vindolanda. It was supposed to be a very, very famous, popular Roman ruin, more recently discovered than most. I had heard about it, but I thought it was in another area than where we were. Turns out it's not. But we did follow the little red line from the bottom of the page, followed the red line all the way up to Vindolanda. And here we are. Public footpath, Vindolanda, 1 mile, Hadrian's Wall, 1.5 miles. Okay, that looks pretty good. 20 minutes, right? Lovely scenery. Do you see a path anywhere? Get to know the natives. I still don't see a path. There's still no path. Well, there's sort of a worn spot right along that tree. Ah, a sign. It does say public footpath, public right-of-way, public footpath, yes. So we knew we're on the right track. Public right-of-way, There's a little house, lovely little house. Can't get there because those signs were in front of it. So we kept following their signs. And we did find this Roman museum. Very impressive. Really, really cool. I highly recommend this museum. There was an entry fee for this one. There's Vindolanda.
Wow.
Gentleman discovered it hiding under his pasture land, started digging and found these incredible ruins.
Is it a ruin to a castle?
No, it's Vindolanda. It's a Roman village. Stronghold, Roman stronghold. It's still an active archaeological site. There were lots of volunteers all over the place working. This is what they thought it looked like. This is what it looks like now. Chipia. And this at the Chester Home Museum. So, this was the first excavation in 1831, which is why they say it's one of the more recent. And along the way outside of the museum, this is an actual Roman mile marker. And there's us walking away from Vindolanda. We're up on a hill. We're heading off towards Hadrian's Wall because we talked to the gentleman at the admissions desk at Vindolanda and said, we really want to get to Hadrian's Wall. How do we do it? He said, are you walking? Yeah. Oh yeah, walking, no problem. He said, you go outside the car park, take a left, you'll see the sign for the public footpath. And then he said, you just keep going right through the field, straight ahead, you can't miss it. Okay, so we left the car park, we took a left, we did find the entrance to the public walkway, found the Roman mile marker. So this is cool. Now which way do we go? There's absolutely nothing in the grass to indicate that there's a path. Nothing at all. I mean, no worn spots. Sheep all over the place. And cows in other fields.
So you must have to dodge some things too.
Well, no, these is open fields. Oh, well, yes.
Yeah.
You have to watch your step.
Yeah.
But we're looking through the fields, we're looking up and saying, I think that might be a stile up there, up up on the hill, we're not really sure, let's head that way. And we did find the stile, right in the middle
Oh,
of,
there's the other spots.
you know. So we said, okay, we must be on the right track. We kept following, kept going through. We did eventually find our way to the top of, we ended up going down the road. We climbed over a few fences where there were no stiles because we couldn't find the stile. Got to a road. Now remember that little hand-drawn map that shows a road? So we knew we were somewhere on that map. And we did actually find a road, because I looked across and I said, I think I see people up on this ridge. And because Vindolanda, where's my mouse? Yeah, Vindolanda is back over in here, over here. It's actually hidden over, behind the rise down there. So we came across there. There's a little road along here. We went along the road. We found another road that would bring us up to this hill, came up to the backside. And sure enough, there was a sign that said, the little place we wanted to get to was one way to the left, and Steel Rig, which I had on my map, was to the left. So we went that way. Went towards Steel Rig because Steel Rig is on my little hand-drawn map.
With all this walking, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you guys gotta be exhausted.
been
We
Question,
were.
yeah.
We were. This is the longest walk, so I refused to take any long walks for a couple days after this.
I can see
But
why.
we took our walking sticks with us, and I would not have survived without walking sticks this particular trip. But this is actually Hadrian's Wall. There's a stone path that goes along the wall, the whole length, width, and breadth. But that tree is Robin Hood tree. The movie with Kevin Costner, Robin Hood, opening scene has him climbing this tree
Right.
when the Moor rides up on the horse, or he rides up on his horse or something, and they meet. He and the Moor. Is that Samuel Jackson that played the Moor? But that's the tree, Robin Hood tree, and it's kind of kept that name. But we're up on top. That's Robin Hood tree, right alongside the wall. So we did walk from this spot, we did go all the way to this band of trees over here. And there's a car park there, no facilities. It's like, oh, darn. So we had to walk down this hill. We did eventually end up down near these trees where the visitor center was. That was closed by the time we got there.
Oh.
This is a Roman fort. There are Roman forts every mile on along Hadrian's Wall. And there's me using my walking sticks. You see where the path goes? Around there and then back up alongside of the wall. And they do ask you not to walk on the wall because it's not going to stand forever. But we're at the top of what they call Steel Rig, and that's where the Picts and the Scots come from. It's not yet Scotland, but that's why they built the wall, was to keep those Scots out. Pesky Scots. So there's another type of style to get into the Roman fort. So this is usually where my husband steps up and said, in search of a picture. He wanted to take a picture of St. Mary's Lighthouse. So these are a series of ways of taking pictures of this particular lighthouse. And keep your eye on the level of water, because this is the Black Sea and it has tides. This area felt a lot like New England, felt a lot like Maine.
I can almost see those waves roll.
Yeah. See that little walkway on our right? There's a corresponding one up by the lighthouse.
Oh. When the tide is out, can you walk?
There you go.
Don't get stuck over
The
there.
different ways, bring up the pylons on this side in contrast to the lighthouse. They're both, and as soon as there's a place to take pictures, the photographers show up. He said by the time he was leaving, there were probably 8 or 12 photographers out there. So they all arrived during this one magical hour. It was getting this, the light was fading.
You're right, yeah.
And he was with them, he had his tripod and kindred spirits. This was one of those trips he took by himself. I said, I'm going back to the apartment. We'll go out to dinner when you get back. So there it is, the walkway all the way out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's kind of neat with the reflection in the water.
that.
Very sharp.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit better, but you really don't have a sense of scale
Mm.
with that. That's good. This is the one he eventually printed.
Hmm.
Because it gives you a good sense of scale. You see the person that's down in the lower right corner. You can really see how tall that light is. And the light is reaching up, you know. Where's the sky?
That iron item is to keep people from
From
walking.
Climbing
on the top.
over,
Yeah.
exactly, walking along
Hmm.
the top of the wall and going around. But that's also a nice one
I like
Well, it's
that.
with the moss.
And with the
Yeah,
reflection
and the
too, yeah.
reflection, exactly. They both have nice elements in them.
Yeah.
And that's the lighthouse way over on the right, and where we're standing is just out front of our apartment.
Mm.
But he took a series of bus and metro to get there and back. Tynemouth Priory, wonderful Victorian train stations. This one obviously had at some point several train lines, and they filled them all in with concrete because all these stanchions, all these uprights would have been in between the trains.
Hmm.
But people have cars now, so they don't use the trains as often as they need to. So this is one of those fun things we found. Tynemouth Priory, we had been told it was a really nice place, nice architecture. But we wanted to go because there was a little restaurant nearby. Very pretty. There's a long,
Yeah, the grounds are meticulous on these.
Oh, yeah.
these
I know.
areas. They're
They really
beautifully
are.
done.
Is this a drawing?
no, it's a photograph.
Is this a photograph?
Yep, it's a photograph. It's showing where, you know, the priory is right out on a peninsula. And it was a station during the war, World War I and II. Beautiful little chapel. I was gonna look up, find out what the dates were. The only thing that's still mostly intact, that's the ceiling. And that's the guy taking the picture. But it's a little small place, and we were the only ones there, so. This is it's still a memorial, they've got memorials from the 1800s in here. I just love that. It's so pretty. And the original door.
Beautiful.
And they had machine guns, yes. Right there.